I've had the same haircut since 1989, so I've decided to let you, in the interest of artistic sharing, follow your muse. So if there's something you want to do with my hair that you think would work, great. If you want to have fun with it, I don't care. All I care about is that my beard be trim and that I look pretty. I'm not going for the Eric Donald. I'm not going for the man bun, and I'm definitely not going for the Eric and Donald Trump Jr. skull look either. So.
All right, so we're gonna. Okay, but I think you'll be feeling pretty dapper.
Good. And I can accomplish the Greek man's dream of having hair run from his feet all the way up to the top of his head.
There you go. So what makes you identify with, like, are you involved with the community, or is it just kind of how you relate?
My father's Greek. He was born in the village of Tripoli.
So first generation then, huh?
Yeah, first generation. It's not just Greeks. It's technically Orthodox Easter. A lot of other religions do it as well. But for whatever reason, when I was growing up, the Greek heritage tended to be more present in my daily life. Mm-hmm. My mom's side is Southside Irish, but it's more of American mutt.
I think they play nice though, Southside Irish and Greek.
Well, the guilt level is equally high, if not shared properly across both generations. So that's worked out. And then I'll just simply say that they're all wonderful people, and I love them all very dearly.
Yeah. There you go.
But the crazy ones know who are crazy.
Yeah. Well, no, then they're not. That's what makes you crazy. You don't know you're crazy.
That's a fair point. But I will say that a lot of the important entertainment stuff comes from my grandma, who got me at the very young age to love movies and to love the White Sox. And most importantly, and I would be remiss if I didn't say this, it's love the White Sox, but almost more importantly, hate the Cubs.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes.
Really?
Oh, yes. Aww. And I'm very glad in this public forum to simply say I am one of 10 people in this city who hated the fact that they won.
No, you're going to cost us followers here.
But I'll gain you so many Sox fans.
True.
100,000 people going for you.
My grandpa's Southside Irish.
Yeah.
He had the same thing. And me and my dad would just be so like, what? I don't understand. Like, and he was a Chicago cop for like 50 years. Or maybe not that long. 40 years.
He was a Chicago cop?
Mm-hmm.
Up until when?
Well, I mean, he's
wondering,
gone now. He was like 80. He was pushing 88, I think. He was pushing.
Well, no,
90,
I was just wondering if he was working the streets during the like 80s with all the crack and everything going on.
Oh yeah. The classic angry, like, spent too much time on the beat and then too much time behind the desk, and just. So
every cliche about a racist Chicago cop that you hear, fair enough. That happens.
It happens. It does.
That's Chicago though. That's why I do the Chicago Podcast Network. It's the world's biggest small town.
Exactly.
I mean, like if you've lived.
I love that. Yeah.
Well, if you've lived in this town your whole life, you generally speaking can't go anywhere where you don't know some people. Now, if you're traditional,
or knows people that know me,
right? Yeah. I mean, if you're traditionally North Side, generally speaking, you're gonna know more people up there. But I've got a couple friends who live on the South Side. I've got family friends who are down there. Stuff like that. You know people everywhere. Mm-hmm. It's just the way things work in this town.
Everybody does know everybody.
Well, because everybody's got a friend who's done improv at Second City, or is a hairstylist at a salon, or worked as a bartender at Crowbar. Yeah. The more you know. Dun, 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 dun.
Sit, boo boo, sit.
Good dog.
Yeah.
That was a bit.
Maybe we should take this.
Take a second, appreciate it.
Yeah, Second City. I know so many people. It almost seems to me like it's not a real thing anymore.
I took a class there, I don't know, maybe 8 years ago, and it went all right. I got through it, and it was fine. It just wasn't my... to be honest with you, as much as I appreciate the artistic process, if there's one thing I hate more than critics, it's people who are artistic sometimes, because it just gets to the point where, I don't know, I get frustrated dealing with people who, they all become perfectionists at Second City, and it's not their fault. I'm sure that it goes away with experience, but at the early levels, you've got people who want everything to be perfect all the time, and that's just not realistic to what's happening.
Well, and you know what? It's the same with hair. You get all that too.
Yeah.
The one that just graduates from beauty school and is like, just an expert and everything, and wants to direct traffic and tell everybody what to do. But
yeah, and
a year could go by.
I started in radio. I was very lucky. I had a high school radio station. So
That's cool.
Well, and I like to do my North Shore voice when I do it. But I went to Glenbrook South High School in Glenview. And it's
Which one?
Glenbrook South High School in Glenview. And they had a radio program. And the teacher there, and I'll give her credit right now on air, was a woman named Del Kennedy. And she saved my life. I don't ever say anything different. I was a very shy, very closed off kid. I was. No, you got to understand. Until I met this woman, until she dragged it out of me, I would sit in the back of the class. I'd never speak to anybody. I didn't have really any friends except one guy. She said, we had to do a presentation. It was like a 15-minute audio documentary, and I did one on the Rolling Stones. And it was really good, and I worked really hard on it, but I hated listening, and I still do, hate listening to the sound of my own voice over tape. I don't like how I sound. In my head, I sound a lot deeper and have more gravitas than I do when I hear my voice.
And there is actually there's a scientific reason for that.
Right.
That it's your inner ear. What you're hearing is not what is being projected out. All that is all distorted in your head because it's your inner ear.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And so I'm all nervous, and I asked her if I could leave class while they played it. I was like, play it for everybody. I want them to hear it. I just don't want to listen to it myself because I've been doing it for so long. So she said, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm nervous. I don't like it. She goes, Nick, let's say that it was the worst thing you could have done. Let's say that the tape had ripped off in the middle of your presentation and you'd gotten an F. She goes, which would have been bad, but let's say that happened. And I said, yeah. She goes, did any babies die? No. Did your mom die? No. Then who cares? And realistically, that's kind of the philosophy that guides what I think about politics, what I think about life. Like, we freak out about stuff, we get really crazy about stuff, but she taught me that lesson, and it kind of took it into everything else. And so at the radio stuff, when I thought about doing stand-up as I got a little older, I love radio. I don't really love stand-up myself doing it. I love listening to it, but I like doing new jokes every day. A big part of what I do, and it's something not a lot of people do, is I read all the news. And when I say that, I do not mean that I read for 5 minutes. It means I go online every morning and I start with, it's a list. I start with CNN, I go to The Atlantic, I go to Politico, I go to The Hill, I go to Fox News, I go and I get everything. Because you've got to know what's going on to be good. And I just can't imagine doing that and then going on stage and telling the same jokes that I told last night. For the longest time, I thought I'd end up in sports talk radio. That's where I thought I'd be. And I love stats and all that stuff. But when I focused on it, I started feeling empty. I'm not going to affect anything. Like, nothing's going to change. I'm never going to make a team do something I want it to do because I'm on the radio.
Yeah.
But when it comes to politics, if you get a big enough audience, if you have enough voice, one of the reasons I do this podcast, I tell my friends, is it's because I can't be Batman. If I could be Batman, if I could go out and fight crime, I would legitimately go do that. But that's not an option for a career.
Yeah, right.
So I talk about stuff and I try to inform people about what I think is going on. And
so you're a social vigilante.
Yeah, I like to think that's the best way I've ever heard it put. Yeah, that's the way I like to think about it. Cool. I try to fight for reason and kindness.
Thank you.
That's what my argument is. I don't think of myself as a comedian when I'm doing my show. I think of myself half-assed comic educator. And I don't, people watching understand I'm not some egotistical maniac. All I'm saying is I take the time to do the reading. We have to account for people not always changing at the speed that you'd like. I'm a lefty. I'm as far left as they come without being an actual socialist. I was a big Bernie Sanders supporter. I love that man, and I loved Barack Obama. But there's also this. You have to understand that there's a reason why all things happen. Why does this bathroom bill become such a deal? Because put yourself in the shoes of a 55-year-old man who lives in rural South Carolina or North Carolina. Who's never, to his knowledge, met a transsexual, transgender, or a gay person, and doesn't necessarily know what they're talking about. So they hear, well, you're going to let men in women's clothing go into the girls' bathroom. They get afraid of that. And it's understandable. They haven't been exposed to what we've been exposed to in a major city where you can see a guy walking naked down the street covered in green jello on a Tuesday
And
at
nobody
4.
looks twice.
Let's be honest, folks. I don't care what sexual orientation. Let's just all agree on this. If a stranger talks to you in a bathroom, get the hell out of the bathroom. Like, here's a thing that women don't know. Do you know about men's room etiquette?
No.
Okay. Men's room etiquette is this. If you're alone in a men's bathroom standing at a urinal and there's 5 urinals and somebody comes in and walks towards you and stands at the urinal next to you, that's a crazy person. Get the hell out of there. Like, it doesn't matter.
So how often does that happen? Does it happen a lot?
No, that's why it's rare. It's a weird thing.
Okay.
You know, you got to be ready for it though.
Have you ever gone, how much have you gone abroad?
I've been to Greece, Canada. I think that's it.
So but never England? I would.
No.
And this was like 10 years ago before any of this kind of talk. I'm not kidding. It wasn't just like one, very like, over the top punk rock bar or something. Like, this was pretty typical. Not a neighborhood pub, and literally you go into the washroom, and a couple of these places, it was a hole in the ground. There was no stall or urinal or anything. It was a hole, and it did everybody. Just there was no differentiating. There was no women's. There was no men's.
Yeah.
Everybody just went to the same bathroom.
And nobody had any problems.
This was like
other than the
10
normal
years
problems
ago.
of people doing way too much cocaine in a club bathroom.
Right. I mean, nobody gave a shit.
Yeah. But you
And I
gotta,
wonder if they're like questioning it now. Like, are they taking a look at like, oh well, do we need that? You know what I mean?
It's always important to remember this fundamental thing about the United States of America. We are a Puritan country. That's how we got started. Mm-hmm. So we have a shame about ourselves that the rest of the world doesn't necessarily have, especially Western Europe. So they came here, and at our core, we were founded on a repressive idea. Not to mention we had slavery when we started.
It's like you can't really. It's always these things have always been there.
Exactly.
Always.
And there's, but you say that, but it's interesting. I'll give you an example of something that hasn't been there. Gay rights is a fundamentally new idea based on the scheme of time. If you look at the civil rights movement, it starts realistically in 1865 with Reconstruction, pushes through the Jim Crow era. You get basically up to the early 1920s, World War I, World War II, which fundamentally changes Americans' perceptions of African Americans because they serve in both of those wars, and they do so with distinction.
Right.
Which leads to the birth of the modern civil rights movement. We still have a lot of civil rights issues. Black Lives Matter is not a fake thing. Like, that's a real movement that still needs to happen. But gay rights have come a long way very quickly. And so you have a culture of people out there who are, like, we've just gotten to the point where it's constitutionally okay for gays to get married, and now you're telling me that I have to let people who I think of as having a mental disorder. Now, transgender is not that. But there are people who perceive
Believe
it
that way, yeah.
And you have to account for
it.
I heard somebody say this once. I think it was last night. I watched Louis C.K.'s new stand-up special. And he made a great point in it. And he said, look at abortion. He goes, do I believe in a woman's right to choose? Absolutely I do. But if you don't believe in that, and if you might not think that, I might not think that, and I don't, but you have to.
There are people that do.
That's what they believe. They believe that in an abortion clinic, innocent children are being killed. And until you can convince them of otherwise, you have to account for their beliefs in any decisions that you make. Well, you're talking about when Roe v. Wade became a part, or when it became politically active now, because those are two questions. So what we think of as the modern abortion crisis comes out of the 1994 Congressional Caucus.
It's more recent.
Right, that was run by Newt Gingrich.
Right.
That's where he basically comes from. He stood in opposition to Bill Clinton, and they used conservative Christians to bolster their Republican base because they had lost the Democratic working class. That's the class that Trump won over in the last election. The same group that Bill Clinton got Bill Clinton elected is the same group that elected Donald Trump. It's always important to remember that. Yeah,
it was hard to vote because it was kind of like.
Well, it's hard. It was harder to vote in this election, but you can make assumptions based on data that has presented itself. But there are two possibilities. One, Hillary Clinton is the greatest criminal in the history of the world who has gotten away with the greatest crimes of all time, which is very difficult to believe based on the fact that her husband got caught having a blowjob in the Oval Office.
Yeah, right.
Like, they couldn't even do that correctly. So I find it hard to believe that they're super criminals.
Yeah,
Or
no.
the Republican Congress is the most inept organization in the history of the world because this clearly guilty woman got away scot-free 8 times. So which is it? It can't be anything other than that. And you go back, and that's what Louis C.K. is saying about the abortion thing too. Is if you account for what people believe, then you can have reasonable discussions.
Stories in the Bible and stuff like it's pretty.
Mm-hmm. Well, here we can look at the Bible like this. Do you know when the Bible was not written in the year 0? The Bible was written in the year 350 AD by a conclave of Roman clerics who decided on which 4 gospels to use. There were 13 disciples. They all wrote gospels, but only 4 got used. And they chose the 4 that celebrated the divinity of Christ and cut the ones that questioned whether or not he was human. And that's important because you have those 4 books, but if you find the other gospels, they say different, which is true, which is not. Again, there's a reason for everything.
Yeah. So how did you find me anyway?
You actually you followed me on Twitter.
So you just do it, yeah, okay.
Somebody asks you, when somebody follows you, you respond and you try to do the same. It's a way to pay it forward. Because you also never know, like if you develop a network of people, you never know. One week, one guy's Twitter might be, or one woman's Twitter might become, and honestly, between the 2 of us, because you're an attractive woman, you're more likely to explode over Twitter than I am. But that's honestly the case. Like you have.
Well, but you just like totally admitted you hate the Cubs.
Yeah.
So I think you got a little chance there.
But the White Sox fans will know. And let me make this abundantly clear. I do hate the Cubs, but I don't really hate the Cubs, and I don't really hate Cubs fans. I'm not some emotional moron. It's just, there's nothing wrong with a little fake hatred every now and then.
Gotcha.
And let's have fun with it. One of my best friends is a guy, and I won't say it, well, his real name is whatever, but everybody calls him Goofy. But he is a diehard Cubs fan. I am a diehard White Sox fan.
He's like one of your best friends.
He's one of my best friends. I love the dude to death. And he and I, every year, have a $50 bet over who will have the better record, the Cubs or the White Sox. And without fail, no one has ever collected. No one has ever been like, oh, you owe me $50. You got. I think in the first 2 years we traded money back and forth. But other than that, it's like never been an issue. It's more about talking smack.
Yeah.
And he calls me whenever, like all last season, he'd call me once a week and just literally read me the highlights of the Cubs season. Like he would just go like, by the way, this week, Jake Arrieta had another great game. Did you see it? And I'm like, no, I didn't see it. I was watching my White Sox get killed for the 900th time. Yeah. Like it's fun. It's more fun to have that, and that gets into the other stuff too. It's like it's fun. Why not have fun with it? There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with hating the other team, as long as you don't actually hate them.
Right.
And if you can't draw that line, then you're an idiot.
Exactly. The people that are. Oh
Yeah.
God. Like literally, I remember the year that the Cubs almost won.
Yeah, in 03, the greatest baseball season of all time. It's even better than when the White Sox won it.
Yeah. And
I legitimately believe that, by the way, Cubs fans out there. I enjoyed 2003 more than I enjoyed 2005. It is in the top. It is definitely one of my favorite moments of my life. I was working at a bar. The owner was a diehard Cubs fan. We had bet $50 during the previous series that the Cubs would lose to the Braves. The Cubs had won. And it's game 6, and the ball goes up to left center field, or no, left field up under the wall. Bartman does his thing. Moises Alou loses his goddamn mind. And then I came in on my day off for game 7 just to celebrate the fact that they had lost and rub it in my boss's face.
Oh.
I'm an entertainer. I like to make things bigger than they are.
Oh, that's funny.
That's the other side of it. If you're gonna be like me, if you're gonna be the guy to sit there and celebrate everything, you've got
to dish it. You better be.
And everyone just laughed in my face because I cried, but not for happiness. I'm a weird guy.
I'm gonna have you look down for this. I know it's a little weird because you're talking, but
no, that's fine.
I'm trying to clean the line up a little bit.
Well, and look, you handled everything with me the right way. No matter what it turned out to be, and I'm not a crazy killer, but you meet somebody randomly on the internet, it's good to have other people in the apartment just to make sure that you don't get murdered.
With cameras rolling.
Which, you don't know. I could be Liam Neeson and Taken and be able to take all of you out before you stand up.
It's true.
It's just, I find it unlikely. So the need to kill you is low.
Oh, that's good.
Well, I believe in the fundamental goodness of most people. Most people will help if you ask. If you're stranded on the side of the road, someone will generally stop and help.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've never, ever felt like, so I ride a motorcycle, right?
Mm-hmm.
I haven't recently because it's just a lot of different financial stuff, but I do have a Harley at my dad's. I was on that thing all the time by myself. I used to ride with a bunch of people at one point in my life, but eventually I just ride. I'd rather be on two wheels than in a car. I can't tell you how many times I have dumped that bike and been like, I'm screwed, because I can't, I just can't pick it up. It's physically impossible. And like literally, it wasn't even a matter of like standing there flagging people down. It was like the second I dropped it, somebody was like, bike up, ready to go.
Look,
like,
there's no time in human history you'd rather be alive right now based
Thank
on
you.
everything else. Most people are going to live to be 80 who are alive right now. That's an amazing thing. There are upsides and downsides to that. The upside is people live longer. The downside is people living longer means they need to use stuff more than they ever used to. So, and they use it longer. So when you hear people talking about healthcare, when you hear people talking about immigration, there are real concerns that need to be addressed in those conversations. Now, you got to separate the difference between the racism and the prejudice versus what's practical. But these things matter, and what I try to do on the show that I do is let's take a second, let's apply our thinking to what we're talking about. I don't want to call it common sense because it's not common sense. You have to be informed to be able to talk intelligently, speak intelligently about topics. So a big thing on our show, and AJ and I talk about it all the time, is never be afraid to admit your ignorance. That's important. Mm-hmm. If you don't know something, never be afraid to say, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, here, let me give you an example. If I were to say to you that one of the biggest issues facing America right now economically is corporate tax loopholes. Okay, I say that. And it's something that a lot of politicians will say. But do you know what that means? And it's okay that you don't, but you don't, right? No. But why would you? You cut hair, you work, you live your life, you do your stuff. It doesn't affect your life to know that either way. Mm-hmm. But it's an important issue because in the end it affects how much tax revenue the state is going to need from your small business.
And I do understand that aspect of it. I just don't understand how those dots are connected.
Right, and that's what we try to do is we try to let people know that when we're talking about illegal immigration, we're not just talking about jobs, we're also talking about healthcare. We're talking about clean water. We're talking about natural resources. There are things that come about from, look, if a million illegal immigrants came over the border tomorrow, that would destroy the economy. A Republican idea that I agree with is deregulation in some areas. There are too many regulations that don't work. Get rid of them if they don't work. That's fine. The problem is that they go too far, and they have a company like BP Oil who destroys the Gulf Coast, and everyone flips out on that. But what nobody really knows is that 3 months earlier they'd had a refinery fire in Dallas, and a year before that they'd had a refinery fire in Alaska. All from the same issue, from the fact that the government inspectors are understaffed and not able to properly patrol the pipelines and detect the corrosion. So they cut the regulations, they cut their funding, and you end up, with Deepwater Horizon.
Yeah.
Like that's connecting it. So it all functions into everything else. But you have a town up in Michigan, it's just outside of Detroit, where the water is so bad that kids can't shower in it, they can't drink it. It has lead, which is destroying their brains. They've experienced an actual IQ decline across, the entire community as a result of actual lead poisoning. Well, this is what I do on my show, and I'll explain it to you in a way that you'll love it. You call an 800 number. Let's say your internet goes out, okay? You call Comcast. Then that person transfers you. Then that person transfers you. And finally, you're talking to technical services. All right, but you start to get frustrated. You start to go, look, I've been on the phone, and people who are listening to this, this is a sentence we've all said. I've been on the phone for 45 minutes. I'm tired of talking to 6 different people. I don't think this is
Can I
that
get a
big.
real human no,
Yeah.
or give me a human.
Right, and I just want to solve this very simple problem. And they go, well, sir, there's no need to take that tone of voice. It's not my fault. And you go, I know, okay, I know that it's not your fault, but it's not the guy's fault before you, or the guy before you, or the woman before that, or the person before that. At some point, can someone please just be accountable for the fact that I can't download my weird-ass porn today? Okay, I've been looking at a Playboy like a goddamn Neanderthal, and I need my internet to work. Okay, but what's happened is all those corporations, and the government is like this too, is full of people who can say, not me directly. Lyndon Johnson, famously, who was the former president of the United States, famously had a thing on his desk that said, the buck stops here. You know, if something is wrong with government, at the end of the day, the president accepts responsibility for what's wrong with it. I laugh. Realistically, that's how it's supposed to work. So the governor of Michigan is aware of the situation in Flint, Michigan, and does nothing to prevent it. At which point it goes national, and no one is held accountable. No one has gone to jail as a result of this, and in the meantime, people have died. That all stems from a lack of accountability at a governmental level, and that exists in every form of government in the United States right now. And one of the reasons I was such a big Obama supporter is he did what I always thought was the most important thing a president can do. When something is really not right, he took responsibility for it. And that's all I ask of a leader. I will celebrate your successes, but be accountable for your defeats. Put logic into your brain and apply it to stuff. It goes back to what we started your show with here, with the transgender thing. Put yourself in the shoes of a 50, 60, 70, 80-year-old, 90-year-old person who's never had to deal with it. And ask yourself if you can reasonably expect that person. But as a consequence of that, if you're the person answering the question of what they don't know, you've got to be patient and give them time to absorb and analyze the information in their own way. Filter it through their own head. Everyone could change, because I've changed. When I was so extreme, let's say the Klan, right?
Yeah.
But there are Reformed Klan members. I hate the idea that, well, we are all beautiful snowflakes and we are all wonderful creatures. Like, that's new age liberal shit that bugs the crap out of me. But we are all coming at things from our own experiences, and you have to be accountable for that. I tell people all the time, like, I know that you can change the language you use, because it was very conscious of me to stop saying the phrase, it's gay, to mean something is silly or stupid. When I was a kid, if somebody did something stupid, you went, dude, that's gay. Mm-hmm. That exact expression, dude, that's gay.
And that was just kind of like...
And it was accepted. That's what you said. And to this day, if something silly or stupid happens around me, I might accidentally slip and go, dude, that's gay.
Yeah,
But it's not like I'm saying homosexuals are bad or that it's bad to be gay. When I was a kid, I associated the feeling of that's silly and stupid with the words, that's gay. Now, I'm older and I've learned to stop doing it. The case, you can be Mel Gibson and drunkenly screaming on the street for 45 minutes and telling people that the Jews are trying to kill you, and at some point you go, all right, dude, like, you should have come. Well, look, if he'd gotten out of the car screaming for 3 minutes, I'd have let it slide. These are clearly some deep-held beliefs that you've got, and all it's going to take is 15 years and 1 Oscar nomination, and you'll be fine. The idea was that after everything that happened to Mel Gibson, we're still like, all it took was, a few years and some apologies and one really good movie, and Mel Gibson's back in Hollywood's good grace. I haven't watched a Mel Gibson movie since the night that all that happened. And it's not because Mel Gibson doesn't make great movies, but I also feel uncomfortable when I watch a Mel Gibson movie because I can't help but think about what he did.
Yeah, but what about, so like that Woody Allen?
I've
no genius, and
but he also married his stepdaughter, which is fucked up.
It is, but like I still have to admit, like I'm not like, because you know what? If we like seriously, like I studied music for most of my life until I
and most musicians are bad people.
No,
at least at that level.
Some of the most Mozart, for example, the one that everybody knows, was pretty bad shit crazy. He. Whether it's bipolar or what, but he had some serious, like...
Right, and there's nothing wrong with saying the artist is the art that the artist made. There's something to say about an artist, the art the artist has made versus the person, but it's also, art is about what you feel when you experience it, right? Like, that's what art is for. Mm-hmm. You got a director like Roman Polanski, who hasn't been allowed to come back to the United States for 15 years because he's waiting for rape charges. What am I comfortable doing? and celebrating when I know about what I know about the artist. So it goes back again to that same question. Roman Polanski, Mel Gibson, any of those people who've gone through the controversy, where do you draw the line and what are you comfortable accepting for your entertainment?
Because, like, it's, you want them to be great. You want them to be good people. You want to, you know what I mean?
You want to like the people that you enjoy. That's that's important. It's like when you watch a TV show and it's important to you that the actors get along.
Right. So how are you feeling about the length?
I love it. The hair
Yeah?
looks really good.
Okay.
It's exactly what I wanted.
Like,
I have an odd shaped head. It's fine.
No, you got the curl. I didn't want to cut all that curl off. That's for sure. So.
Everybody who's ever done my hair says that. They always like my hair, and I know that I have wonderfully soft hair. I condition once a month.
Wait,
it is without
how
a
often
doubt.
are you shampooing though?
Every day.
So you should be doing the opposite. You should be conditioning every day, shampooing. Maybe.
Whose hair is soft? Whose isn't?
Well,
No, you're the expert. I just like.
It's true. I chemically treat my hair with color and stuff. You're not doing that, so it's not as high of a concern.
No, it's
but,
just. Head and Shoulders has been
shampoo.
waking me up for 35 years. It's going to wake me up for another 35.
Oh, you're killing me!
By the way, have you seen any gray hairs?
I honestly haven't.
Damn right.
I would be honest.
Dad.
I thought you were older.
Yeah.
Because your podcast, you sound like, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Then how old
I
are
appreciate
you?
it.
30.
I'm going to be 35. I'm 34. I'm 34.
I certainly am not like spending most of my days reading and listening to CNN or like reading news.
Right.
What's going on.
I'm right now where I think a lot of guys who go into any form of broadcasting or comedy get to in their 50s.
Yeah.
Only because I've done it for the same amount of time as the people who do it that long. What I've realized as I've gotten older is I'm actually glad none of that I never really went after it very hard, because I would feel very empty right now if I was just a comedian or a sports talk host, because it's more important to me to have a voice on policy. And while small and insignificant my voice may be for now, it's more important to me to fight for that, because so I've taken that skill and kind of tried to apply it to politics. It's not so much that I'm better at it than most people, it's just that I have very fast recall.
Yeah.
And so if an issue comes up that I know about, the stuff that I've learned is easily brought to the surface.
Yeah.
What did you call me, a podcast vigilante?
Yes.
Yeah, like that. That's perfect. Intellect is knowing what I know and knowing what I don't and working within that to make the right choice. Ego is thinking that I know everything and anything I don't know is stupid. I'm sure you've heard in your life fake news, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so the president, by the way, I hope you noticed that I keep calling him that. And the reason is that I do respect the office, if not the man. That's very important to me. We show the office respect, not necessarily the man holding it. But the president has repeatedly tried to make it seem like he always knows what's going on. And that's very dangerous. I like to run people through what I call the West Wing scenario. Mm-hmm. The West Wing was a show on NBC, and it was a great show. And
I watched a little bit of it.
Okay, but there's an episode that's very important to me when thinking about President Trump. In the scene that I'm talking about, Martin Sheen is the president, and his chief of staff comes to him and says, "We've lost radio contact with a submarine off the coast of North Korea." Okay, well, the submarine was off the coast. It went quiet, possibly to hide. The president of the United States needs to become an expert on North Korean policy, territorial water, maritime law, nuclear submarine operation, and standard combat operating procedure in a foreign power. All right, so that's like 7 things he's got to be an expert on in 7 minutes.
Yeah.
That requires homework. That means that the last 3 nights when the submarine was going into the territory, he did the reading to know what was going on in the area so he can make an informed decision should an emergency arise. And when it comes to our current president of the United States, the only question that matters is, do you trust that at 7 o'clock at night when his workday is over, that President Trump has gone back to the residence in the White House and has read the required reading for tomorrow's briefing? And
So
if
he's
you're
checking his Twitter feed.
and if your answer to that is anything other than an unequivocal yes, then the man is not qualified to be president of the United States.
Right.
That's really where the conversation to me ends. I don't like the policy of Republicans. I fought against George Bush's policies to no end. But I will tell you something about George Bush. He did his homework. Whether or not you liked the man, whether or not you thought what he was doing was right.
But
Which is, listen, there have been presidents who couldn't put 2 sentences together before him. But the point is, I trusted each and every one of them to go home that night and take the job with the responsibility that it has. His job is the president's job is important. He makes decisions that people will live or die. And I don't think he appreciates that responsibility. That's why I can't stand our current president. Mike Pence is a terrible man in a lot of ways. He's homophobic, he's racist, he's so vehemently against drugs that he caused an AIDS epidemic in his home state. That's not me talking out of my ass. If you look it up, the state in the United States with the highest growth rate of heroin addiction and AIDS is the state of Indiana. And it's because he stopped free needle exchange and condom giveaways at state facilities. He stopped those policies. Indiana exploded in AIDS and in sexually transmitted diseases. When you leave the state of Indiana, there's a sign on the state that on the highway that tells you where to go to get AIDS testing in Illinois.
It's just like, we don't have a choice.
It's been 2 months. What has he done to make you feel that he's doing the job? I hate being the negative guy on that, but you've got to ask that question. When he constantly is giving you bad information, fake news, he says that like it's a thing. Do you mind if I'm going to look at the camera one more time to your audience? Audience, fake news is real. But let me tell you the agencies that aren't fake. CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, The Hill, New York Times, Washington Post, National Review. I've named some conservative papers. I'll name other things. Major news organizations are not fake. They have published journalistic ethics. They have 2 source rules. Fake news is saying that yesterday Barack Obama found aliens. That's fake news. What he's talking about is commentary. That's not fake.
Conspiracy.
Alex Jones.
Yes,
Alex Jones is the bane of my existence. I have an episode of my podcast that is called It's called Out Front. Alex Jones is a fucking joke.
Oh,
that is the name of my show.
It.
We did an hour and a half on Alex Jones. A friend of mine who I went to high school with is a big InfoWars guy, and he started posting it on my wall every day, and I never blocked him. Because that's the other thing. People block too much. I like to hear what the other side is saying.
Yeah, you want to know. Exactly, I agree.
Would you like me to destroy Alex Jones for you in a little bit? Because this will be fun for your audience.
Sure. I mean, just to be clarified, though, I'm not for or against him.
No, I know. You'll be against him when I'm done. So, one of the things, you've heard me say on a few times tonight, everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
Okay. Part of that is to know this. I'll give you an example. Outside of Alex Jones. Have you ever heard of the Area 51 conspiracy?
Yes, of course.
Okay, aliens crash landed in Roswell, and the government kept it a secret there, okay? Mm-hmm. All right, now, you've heard that story 100 times in 100 different movies and shows, most notably The X-Files, God bless Fox Mulder. Mm-hmm. But here's the thing you got to think about. Why? Why would suppose that it's true. Let's say that that's true. Why did the government lie about it? Why is it a secret?
Right. That's true.
The answer is simple. They want a military advantage over our enemies. Okay, sure. Logically that makes sense, right? Like if you think about it rationally, it makes sense that the government would hide that. Okay, good. Now let's look at Alex Jones. Alex Jones believes that Hillary Clinton is folks,
I know.
I'm not making this, no, I'm saying to your audience. He believes that Hillary Clinton was part of a leftist agenda run by the New World Order, the New World Order. That was for the wrestling fans. But he believes that the New World Order, which is part of a Zionist agenda that stretches back to before World War I and involves the Rothschild family and the great powers of the Rockefellers throughout the United States. It's a grand conspiracy that has existed for 200 years, and it's all about this. I swear to God, this is what they believe. They believe that Hillary Clinton wanted to become president of the United States so that she could enact what's called a false flag operation. That's where you act like the country has been attacked so that you can enact certain security protocol. The idea would have been that they would have moved us to secret FEMA camps, which they've covered on InfoWars, where there are hundreds of thousands of black caskets out on the street ready to be filled by the public. Because she's going to enact this operation to force us all to leave the major cities due to a biological attack, forcing us in. This is what Alex Jones believes is happening. He believes that the liberals, the left, are part of a conspiracy that want to kick us out of the cities as the result of a biological attack so that we can work in forced labor camps to build what are known as mega cities so that we can all be forced to live in them, where the liberal elite will have control of water and power and force us to supplicate ourselves to them for the right to have clean water and electricity. All of which is to lead to us all, excuse my spittle there, all of which is for us to live Hillary Clinton and follow the conspiracy on their own website. This is what Alex Jones believes. So whenever you hear that man speaking about any topic, it is important for you to realize that that is what he believes the end game is.
All right. So this is how you clean up. Cleans up nicely, don't you think?
I think so.
Yeah.
I'm very pretty.
You are pretty. But we basically, got some definition in your curl. We took this in, made it nice and neat and clean, and we left most of your length on top and just tied it all together. But most importantly, had some pretty good banter. I learned a lot today.
Good. That's what I do.
And inspired me to learn more. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff I'm going to look into
And
as soon as you leave.
Always be willing to say I don't know.
Yes, very true. But so thanks for joining us, guys, and we will see you very soon.
Chicago Podcast Network.
No bark, Daphne.